I am Emmanuel Perdilla, and I have been stopped and frisked 4 times.
My name is Davon, and I've been stopped and frisked about 5 times.
I'm Domingo Estevez, and I've been stopped and frisked I stopped counting at 15.
My name is Nate Polite, and I've been stopped and frisked 8 to 9 times.
Hi, my name is Randy, and I've been stopped and frisked 3 times.
Please end stop and frisk.
End stop and frisk.
I will not be victimized.
All right, the NYPD's controversial practice of stop and frisk, it's getting attention, and it's getting attention from outside our region. It's getting attention from the feds. Now, one of the big reasons is that stop and frisk overwhelmingly, as we know, targets minorities, city, state, and federal lawmakers. They met with Justice Department officials yesterday asking the feds to scrutinize the department's policy of stopping and searching people. Officials reportedly asked the feds to withhold federal grant money that goes to the program. Now, if Justice Department officials decide to launch a federal investigation, it will be significant. It would deal a major blow here to a policy that's been championed by both Mayor Michael Bloomberg as well as his police chief, Ray Kelly. Now, earlier this week, we heard from a 23-year-old, a Harlem man, who says stop and frisk is so out of control that he's been stopped 5 times in his own neighborhood, even had guns pointed at him during one incident. He told us that when he turned 14, his mother began talking to him about what he should do if and when police officers ever stopped him and frisked him. The lesson was, don't panic, don't run, and don't speak up. You could be arrested or even worse. Always dress right and carry an ID.
She told me just to be prepared. Don't be scared, keep your composure, and keep an ID on me.
Now, according to victims that we spoke with, this has become such a regular occurrence, stop and frisk, almost a rite of passage in certain neighborhoods like Harlem. They're dubbed high crime, not necessarily because of crime data, but because it's become so routine for the NYPD to use the term to justify the stop. You'll also hear terms like furtive movements and other terms that are really hard to really put a finger on, but yet are justifiable under the law here to stop and search and frisk basically whoever the police decide. Now, tonight, the outcry to end the practice seems to be growing louder. Law enforcement officials from inside the NYPD say quotas are indeed a very real thing, and they say officers forced to make phony stop and frisk, even false arrests of innocent people, all in an effort to show headquarters that each precinct has a handle on crime. Now, these aren't just allegations for the conspiracy theorists. One of the officers who sat down for a one-on-one interview with our reporter Kim Lengel let us listen to the audio tapes that he recorded, and on those tapes you can hear for yourselves top commanders in an open patrol room telling officers to increase the number of times they stop and frisk people. And Kim Lengel is here now with much more on that.
Yeah, Rich, that officer is Adil Polanco. When he joined the police force in 2005 as a rookie patrol officer, he says he was told to get out there and write summons. But 3 years later, in 2008, his precinct got a new commanding officer who, in Polanco's own words, went ballistic with the numbers. The orders, he says, came from top commanders and trickled down. He says the NYPD became consumed with writing tickets, stop and frisks, arrests, and manipulating crime reports. A year later, he says he complained to Internal Affairs. He says they did nothing. That's when Officer Polanco decided to tape record the incidents. Now, 2 years later, Officer Polanco has been suspended from the force with full pay.
I want 250 to see something. I want a ghost town. I want to be able to echo from one end of the street to the other. You understand? That's what I want in a perfect world. So that's your mission. Guys need college, need activity, there you go. You gotta get your move.
That's an audio recording made by this man, a suspended NYPD patrol officer who testified in court that he captured this recording during roll call inside the 41st Police Precinct in the Bronx. 250s refer to stop and frisks, and C summonses are for violations such as an open container of alcohol.
We're being forced to arrest innocent people. We're being forced, everything was about numbers, 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 numbers. They wanted X amount of summonses, they wanted X amount of arrests, they wanted stop and frisk, they wanted everything, and they were obsessed with the number.
The recordings established Polanco's claim that NYPD supervisors set specific quotas for summons and arrests, that NYPD management agreed on a quota of 1 arrest and 20 summons per month per officer.
If you think 1 in 20 is breaking your guess what you're going to be doing? You're going to do a lot more. A lot more than what you think.
Officer Polanco testified in a deposition that he personally witnessed other officers stop and question civilians without having reasonable suspicion. He also testified that he himself issued at least 10 summons, even though he knew he did not have probable cause to do so. He says now that he rarely made the number of stop and frisks to meet his quota.
I grew up in the Heights. I grew up in the hood. I know what it's like when it's 90 degrees and you live on a 5th floor and it's hot. And you walk downstairs and you sit in a stool or sit in a car trying to cool off, and then the officer is gonna give you come and give you a summons for blocking pedestrian traffic.
The NYPD has always denied that they maintain quotas, but former New York City Police Captain John Eterno, who for a long span of his career trained officers on how to properly perform stop and frisks, Eterno says, make no mistakes, quotas exist and are illegal.
Officers feel this enormous pressure from headquarters because they're giving them these goal-oriented tasks. They're saying, I want so many numbers. And they're checking them every single day to make sure they hit those targets, is what they call them, but it's really quotas. Officers are consistently being hounded by management for more and more and more numbers.
John Eterno retired from the force in 2003 and is now chair of Malloy College's Criminal Justice Department. He surveyed more than 100 retired police captains and detailed the findings in a recent book, The Crime Numbers Game: Management by Manipulation. His main point is that the number of stop and frisks do not add up to crime prevention. In 2002, about 97,000 New Yorkers were stopped by police. About 82% of them were found to be totally innocent. That same year, there were fewer than 600 murders. Compare that to the latest figures in 2011, where more than 685,000 New Yorkers were stopped. Again, about 88% were found to be totally innocent, and there were still fewer than 600 murders.
So the question is this an effective policy? And based on just this cursory view, this policy is simply not working. They're claiming crime is down 80%. Well, if crime is down 80%, how the heck do you have 700,000 criminal suspects in the street? 700,000 criminal suspects. Do we realize how large that number is? It's bigger than most cities in the United States. So clearly the position of the NYPD is just untenable when it comes to stop and frisk.
John Eterno and Adil Polanco are not the only police officers who feel this way. Former officer Adrian Schoolcraft in the 81st Precinct in Brooklyn, Christopher Benz in Queens, and Christopher Groban of the 41st Precinct in the Bronx have all stepped forward publicly and faced severe scrutiny for doing so. Adil Polanco was suspended 2 years ago, right around the same time he captured the recordings. He has surrendered his badge and his gun, but is still getting his full salary, close to $90,000 a year.
If I had a message for officers out there, and cops, supervisor, look at your own kids. You have kids, I have 3 of them. Look at your kids in their face and tell them what you're doing. Tell them that to bring in a little extra money of overtime, you just arrested somebody for no reason. Also that you're not a man enough to tell your supervisor that this is not right. Or maybe you should try handcuffing your own kids. But some cops, unfortunately, some cops, not all of them, forget about that. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
We reached out to the NYPD several times throughout the week for comment and asked them to respond to specific questions regarding the alleged quotas. They have not responded. Rich.
Thank you, Kim. And joining us now to sound off on stop and frisk, New York State Senator Eric Adams. And Senator Adams, before he joined the legislature, spent 22 years in the New York City Police Department, in fact, rising to the rank of police captain. He also co-founded 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. Senator Adams, thank you for a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Well, is what we just heard there an aberration or are quotas real?
It's real, and the problem is that I passed a bill in the state legislature's body that made quotas illegal. And so when you hear a commander telling or instructing his officers to go out and get a predetermined number of arrests and summonses and what's called UF 250, which are stop and frisk reports. That's a troubling statement, and I don't believe it's in just one precinct. I believe that's the message being sent throughout the entire police department.
And you know, Senator, I'm sure you saw it as well. We had the attorney who has now gotten this case to a class action status suit. And when you read the judge's findings, she says this isn't just one rogue captain or someone else. The contention is this comes all the way up from the top of Police Plaza, if not all the way to Ray Kelly. What do you think?
It's so true. I had a meeting with Commissioner Kelly, Governor Patterson, Assemblyman Hakeem Jeffries, and Senator Marty Golden. During the meeting, Commissioner Kelly was attempting to convince Assemblyman Jeffries and I on why we should not move forward with stopping the database of holding innocent New Yorkers in a database, a police database. At the meeting, he stated, I quote, that the reason we do stop and frisk among young black and Hispanics is because we want to instill in them the fear that anytime they leave their homes, they can be stopped and searched by the police. So what you heard at the roll call was a message that was coming from the top. The police commissioner is driving this message, and any paramilitary organization, the commanders and the troops, they follow the message that's coming from the top. This is a message that's been followed and that's being communicated down from the police commissioner, and the mayor has co-signed this message. What happens if an officer says, hey, you know what? I don't buy what the captain's selling. I'm not going to, ring 10 guys up here. I'm not going to fill out 10 forms for guys. I'm just not going to do it. Are there consequences? Yes, and I'm pretty sure those in the public are probably saying, well, the officers just shouldn't do it if it's wrong. That's not the reality in the real universe of policing. Remember, as I stated, policing is a paramilitary organization. What happens is, if an officer does not comply with this quota, number one, he could lose days off, he can be transferred, he could be put on or placed on special monitoring, with the possibility he can lose his job. If he's a probationary officer, he could be fired with cause, with slightest, basic lack of proper review. And so when you look at the level of coercion that takes place and the intimidation that takes place, you're forcing officers to conduct these unnecessary stop, questions and frisks, summonses, and sometimes arrests. Now, why is that important? Because if you give an officer a quota that he must reach every month, he's no longer looking for individuals who are participating in criminal activity. He's looking for the fulfillment of the quota. So what's swept up in this mission of fulfilling a quota is that you're now abusing a very useful police tool, and you're abusing the power of arrest and the power of issuing summonses. And in America, one of the most dear things we hold value as Americans is our freedom. And when someone takes away the freedom of another American, then it should be with cause, and criminal cause is what we look for. You know, though, I'm sure right now somebody's sitting at home and they're saying, you know what, Eric and Rich, cry me a river, you bleeding hearts. Crime rates down in the city, stop and frisk works. What would you say to that person? Well, the mayor just came out a few days ago and stated that stop and frisk is not stopping the gun problem we have in the city. Keep in mind, over 90% of the people we stopped did nothing wrong at all. So basically, we're stopping the wrong people. If someone was able to show empirical data that states that we're getting a 30%, a 20% hit on people who we stop, that we're coming up with guns, we're coming up with other items or contraband, then one could wrap their mind around, okay, we have a tool here that's being used successful. But when you have an over 90% ratio of people you stop did nothing wrong at all, not something that raised to the level of a summons, raised to a level of an arrest, nothing wrong at all. Something is wrong with the practice. And so I use the tool of stop and frisk. It's an excellent tool. It can solve crimes, it can prevent crimes, and it can apprehend guilty people. But when you tell an officer to go out and search innocent New Yorkers without any substance of that they did something incorrect, that's an abuse of a tool. And the bottom line, that's not what we do in America. And as you said in an affidavit, apparently it's not just stop anybody, they're targeting people.
especially people of color. Now, finally, as you said, you were an officer when this practice started in 2003, and now your constituents are some of the people, I'm sure, that come to your office who talk to you about this. What's the consequence of this practice when it relates to the community and the police force?
Well, I think that you heard the officer on your tape, with one of the tapes from the roll call. He expressed it most. Police officers have come to me and stated, Senator, we don't want to do this. We don't want to continue to create this schism in the communities that we serve. Many times as a police officer and then as a captain, I needed the community to come to me and report criminal behavior. Or it's a community resident that's going to get on the phone and call 911 if I'm wrestling with someone on the ground to apprehend them. You need a good relationship with the good people in a community. If you have stopped over 90% of those good people, you have now turned them against the police department.
Hey, Senator Adams, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.